Hello everyone and thanks for watching Edupedia World Videos. Well, today the topic is Learning Part 1. I am S.K. Puri this side. In this slide you can see me. I am S.K. Puri, your faculty for organization behavior. Well, today the topic that we have selected is learning, and as it is customary that before we start the topic, it is always better to list out the learning objectives of today's talk. Well, the learning objective of today's talk are as follows. We will be discussing what is meant by learning, what is learning after all, and what is its importance to organization behavior. After that, we will discuss how learning happens, or we will discuss about rather the learning theories. Then third is behavior modification, in which we are interested how to change the behavior of the people, how learning to happen in the people. Fourth is self-management and self-efficacy, and how self-efficacy and learning is connected. Fifth, training and development. Sixth, the learning curve. And last but not the least, the specific application of learning in the organizations. Well, as it is always done, before a topic is discussed, we always define the topic or the subject which we are discussing. So here we have to define what is learning. Here I have selected two definitions of learning. The first definition is, learning is the act of acquiring new or modifying the and reinforcing existing knowledge, behaviors, skills, values or preferences, and may involve synthesizing different types of information. The ability to learn is possessed by humans, animals, plants and some machines. So here this definition is stressing upon acquiring of the knowledge, behaviors and skills. The second definition is learning. Learning is any relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of experience. This definition stresses more onto the change of behavior as such. We understand that learning is involving change, and unless until the change has happened, learning is not said to be taken place. So we say that learning involves change. Now, the organization behavior and how learning is connected. We have to, as we have understood, we have to see whether the change in the behavior has occurred. So we ask questions like, does the individual behave or responds in a different manner now after the learning? Is there a relatively permanent change in behavior? If yes, the learning has taken place. Supposing there is a temporary change of behavior, then the learning has not taken place. So here we have seen, as per the definitions also, that if there is a relatively permanent change in behavior, then only we can say that the learning has taken place. We are concerned with how, as managers, we can teach employees to behave in different ways, in ways that are most beneficial to the organization. For example, if the employees are disciplined, less disciplined, or they are coming late to the office, or they are not observing the rules of the organization. For example, on the shop floor, if the shop floor is kept dirty by the people, they litter, they throw away things. So we have to make them learn the new ways of keeping their floor clean or coming to office in time. So learning as it says, it can help organizations in effective management of human resources. Even the skills are to be learned. For example, I have sales people with me. The sales skills I have to make them learn so that they can do effective work. So we want to discuss organization behavior modification process to improve the performance of the employees. That is how learning and organization behavior is connected. After understanding that learning is important for the organizations and it is the duty of the manager to understand that the learning takes place to the employees for all the changes that he wants. Now, what are the theories of learning? There are basically 4 important theories of learning. Number 1, classical conditioning. Number 2, cognitive theory. Number 3, operant conditioning. Number 4 is social learning theory. Let us discuss these theories one by one. The first theory is classical conditioning. It's a very famous theory, and it came first long back. It was proposed by Pavlov, a Russian scientist, or you can say psychologist. He did an experiment. His experiment is very interesting. His experiment was with the dogs. You know that dogs, they salivate, or the saliva comes out when they see meat. From saliva we can say salivate. The salivation takes place whenever there is a presentation of meat. So what he did was that before presenting the meat to the dogs, he pressed a bell, and after the bell was ringing, then he was giving them meat. A very interesting thing happened. Whenever he used to press the bell and the ringing was there, the dogs was salivating even without the meat. So he was ringing the bell and then giving the meat. After that, he found that even ringing of the bell, the salivation was there, and later on, even when the meat was not there, the bell was causing a conditioning pattern of salivation. The salivation was taking place even with the bell. This means that the meat was an unconditioned stimulus and the bell was a conditioned stimulus. But even when the meat was removed and only the bell was there, it eventually produced a response when presented alone. So bell was creating a conditioned response. So bell was the conditioned stimulus. So we can say the theory is like this, that the classical conditioning says a type of conditioning in which an individual responds to some stimulus that would not ordinarily produce such response. Bell would have not produced a response of salivation, but because it was associated with meat, and hence ordinarily does not produce a response, but the conditioning has taken place, a learning has taken place. This is called classical conditioning. Now let us go to the this picture which shows the experiment of Pavlov. Pavlov is a very famous psychologist who gave this theory, and it's a beautiful theory. Now in the picture you see that the meat is giving the response of salivation, but then the bell was there, and without the bell, without the meat, ordinary bell was not creating any response, but bell combined with food, there was conditioning set up, and when the food was removed and only bell was giving the salivation, a conditioning response has occurred. Let us discuss the second theory called operant conditioning. Now operant conditioning is a kind of reinforcement theory. This is the work of Skinner. As the Pavlov was involved in classical conditioning, Skinner was the psychologist who gave this theory, and he said that the reinforcement or reward or the preventing of the punishment gives a kind of conditioning. So operant conditioning is a type of conditioning in which a desired voluntary behavior leads to a reward or prevents a punishment. So whenever you do a behavior, whenever you repeat that behavior, you are given a reward, and hence you learn that behavior. His experiment was like this. As in the case of Pavlov, it was the bell and then the meat was given to the dog. Here he did the experiment with rats. Now in this cage, which is called the cage of the experiment of Skinner cage, in this the rat was there. He was moving around in search of food, and by chance he pressed the lever. When he pressed the lever, the food came from the dispenser tube, as you see here in the picture. And then he learned that whenever he presses the lever, the food comes. Now here he repeats the process of pressing the lever because he is getting the reward of the food. So he has learned to press the lever to get the food. So because of the reward, he is getting that operant conditioning taking place. So now we have seen these two theories, the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. They belong to the category of theories called the behavioral theories of learning. Learning principles like reward system and behavioral management approach are derived from the behavioral theories. When we design the reward system in the management or the behavior modification systems. Now here we see something basic difference between the two. The classical conditioning is the association of stimulus and response. You see in this slide we have SR connection and RS connection. The SR connection is the association of stimulus and response as it has happened in the case of classical conditioning. But in the case of operant conditioning, the learning has occurred as a consequence of behavior. For example, the rat was pressing the lever. So operant condition is thus based on the response and stimulus, RS connection. So the SR connection is connected to the classical conditioning and RS connection is connected to the operant conditioning. Now let us understand through a table the difference between classical and operant conditioning. Here we are showing a table which differentiates classical and operant condition. We are making the difference with respect to nature of response, timing of the stimulus, timing of the response, and role of the learner. First, nature of response. In classical conditioning, the response is involuntary, as we have seen that the bell ringing itself gives this salivation. But in operant conditioning, there is a voluntary usually, but can be both voluntary or involuntary. The learning takes place. In the case of classical conditioning, the response is preceding or before the stimulus is preceding the response. What it means is that the stimulus that was meat was there after the bell. So the salivation, the saliva coming and the meat, the saliva is coming before. But in the case of operant conditioning, the stimulus is after the desired response, means the reward is given after the desired response. If I perform better, I am given more bonus. So in the case of classical conditioning, the response is after the stimulus. But in the case of operant conditioning, it is before the stimulus. The role of the learner in classical conditioning is passive, whereas the role of the learner is active in operant conditioning. Let us see this picture. In operant conditioning, it's a time for food, I should press the lever. So because he is getting the reward of the food, so the rat is knowing it is time for me to press the lever. When he presses the lever, he gets the food. Food is the reward. In classical conditioning, there goes the bell. It's time for food. So whenever the bell is there, he is associating it with the food. This is how we differentiate it. This table is explained by these two pictures very clearly. Now, the third theory, cognitive theory. Cognition is the process of thinking. So, cognition refers to individuals' thoughts, knowledge, interpretation, understanding, or views about oneself and his or her environment. Individual tries to form his or her cognitive structure in memory. So, cognition is a kind of thoughts, knowledge, and interpretation, the information that we gather. So, cognitive theory is the stimulus takes place and the cognitive process takes place, that we gather some information, and based on that knowledge and interpretation and the information, we have responses. So, based on mental processes by which learner takes in, interprets, stores, and retrieves information, we get the knowledge. So, it is basically based on the cognitive processes. Next learning theory is social learning theory. In social learning theory, we observe. We have role models, we observe them. For example, we learn from seniors, we learn from our bosses, we learn from our peers, we learn from our teachers, we observe them, we make them our role models. So here people can learn through observations and direct experience. People respond to how they perceive and define consequences, not on the objective consequences themselves. They have perception, how the things are taking place. So influence of model is central to the social learning point of view. Let me explain by giving an example. Let me say I am a pharmaceutical company and I have got medical representatives. Now these medical representatives are to be trained. So first I give them classroom teaching about the various molecules which they have to sell, various medicines which they have to sell. Then I send the new people, the new medical representative with the old medical representatives, the experienced ones. And the experienced ones they sell and the new ones they observe. When they model the seniors, it is a kind of social learning. And in the class, when they are learning theories on the whiteboard, that is a kind of cognitive sort of learning. So an example of social learning theory is shown in this particular picture. In this particular picture, there is a social learning taking place, that whenever you have to ask a question, you have to raise your hand. Now this boy, the other boy is learning this through the modeling, through observation, that this is the process I have to follow whenever I have to ask for something, raising of the hand. This is social learning. So difference between operant conditioning, classical conditioning, and social learning theory, now we clearly understand that these theories are given by different scientists, and this picture below gives the difference. For example, the Skinner the psychologist, said that the pressing of the lever by the rats was giving them food. So the reward was there. In the Pavlov, the ring was there. So the ring was a conditioned response was there from the ring. That was Pavlov. And Bandura the psychologist, said that he is showing a videotape on how to knock. So that is a kind of social learning. Well, after this, let me say what we will be learning in part 2 of learning. We will discuss the following with respect to learning in our part 2 lecture. Number 1, the application of reinforcement principles. Reinforcement we have studied in the operant conditioning, how to apply those principles in organization behavior modification process and behavior modification as such. And then we will study self-management. How do we apply these theories for our self-management and self-efficacy, and how self-efficacy and learning are connected. Then training and development as a basic process in an organization we will discuss with respect to learning theories. And then we will discuss learning curve, which is an important part of organization behavior. And lastly, but not the least, some specific applications, organizational applications of the learning theories we will discuss. Well, thank you very much for watching Edupedia World videos. And I must say that if you have liked the video, please do subscribe to our channel Edupedia World. Thank you once again. For more videos, log on to www.edupediaworld.com.